So, it's the middle of the week. Our usual posting schedule is on Sundays, but this is something that I've wanted to try for a while. Midweek updates to large stories that we've been following for months when they happen. And before I go any further, if you are looking for our hour-long update on the State of the Disney Company 2025, it's just one episode back in the same feed right before the episode that you're now listening to. But this is our first midweek update ever, I believe. Just a short segment dropped in on a Wednesday as the news happens. We are going to have a new episode in our story about the life of Disney artist Mary Blair on Sunday, so it seemed like today was a good place to explore a big development for the Florida resort and what it means for projects out there moving forward. Since August, here on the podcast, we've discussed Disney plans to close Rivers of America at the Magic Kingdom in Florida to build a Cars-themed area as part of a revised Frontierland, specifically a Frontierland that inhabits the current year, not the 1800s, with off-road vehicles instead of horse-drawn carriages. Since the end of the summer, we've tracked Disney's plans to close the river, fill in the basin, and then regrade the land around it for 2 new attractions. We've also discussed the fan community's reactions to these plans. It's been mixed. There have been supporters, but at the D23 event, on the stadium floor when park expansion plans were announced, this was one of the only places in the program that received a small number, but clearly audible number, of boos. During the fall, we followed the permitting process that would allow Disney to close the river, which required state approval, even though it was a man-made river. One of the largest sticking points concerned stormwater mitigation, essentially how stormwater in large public areas would be safely dispersed, especially during hurricanes, if the Rivers of America didn't carry it out to the larger Disney World canal system, which then would carry it away from the park and roads and disperse it into wetlands. This was one of the largest areas of dispute, as Disney wanted to use a water retention pond, which caused multiple layers of pushback from the South Florida Water Management District, but this was just one element in a multi-page set of requests that Disney needed to answer or create revised plans for before the project could be approved. From here, Disney asked for a 60-day extension to consider and replied to 23 pages of requests. The South Florida Water District granted them just 30 days. Just before Christmas, Disney replied, though in places the tone in that document I would say was a bit testy. The Water Management District should have responded before the end of January in a way that was available for the public to view. When this didn't happen, many people suspected that there was an additional set of problems and probably some backdoor phone calls and conversations outside the reach of the public. But at the start of this week, one day after we posted our Sunday news episode, the Water Management District responded to finally approve the modifications arranged into the request, which will let construction begin. Specifically, the permit authorizes construction and operation of a stormwater management master treatment facility to provide stormwater quality treatment for improvements within various canals and basins within the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. Construction inside of these basins will include pavement upgrades, facility renovations, and other minor upgrades. Or to put it simply, it authorizes Disney to close the river, fill in the basin, and set up alternative ways to manage stormwater, including a 3/4 of an acre holding reservoir. These permits only concern water management, but this was the biggest hurdle for Disney to get over. Other, more traditional permits will cover the construction. And to be clear, the scope of the project far exceeds the 14 acres for the new Cars area. and the permit discusses how the changes to the river and the connection to the canals will affect wetland areas far outside the park. So this plan manages how stormwater movement inside of the park affects wetlands and public spaces just beyond the park itself, including direct impact on 8 nearby wetland areas that total nearly 55 acres. The wetlands that are identified in the permit packet are outside of the Magic Kingdom, mostly behind Big Thunder. Or to put it this way, if you were hovering high above the Magic Kingdom and looking down, with Tomorrowland on your right and Frontierland on your left, these wetlands would also be on your left outside the perimeter of the park, but along the late 1960s canal system that presently is connected to the rivers of America. Basically, it's some of the rich green belt that surrounds the Magic Kingdom, separating the resort from developments over on Sidell Road and the Western Expressway. For those that know the area, there's a Walgreens over there and a Starbucks, along with a whole lot of 2- and 3-story apartment buildings, many of which are rented by cast members. That's the green space that the Water Management District is trying to protect. So where do we go from here? Well, over by the Stoll Port, Disney has filed another permit to move in trailers for construction personnel. The Stoll Port is the old landing strip that is directly between the TDC parking lots and Fort Wilderness. You can see it from World Drive. Long story, but decades ago, back in the 1970s, Disney landed small planes there. Now the landing strip is a flat paved area near the Magic Kingdom that is perfect for temporary trailers when construction happens on this side of the resort. Next, with a separate set of permits, over by Big Thunder, on-site efforts will start by creating 5 gravel laydown yards. These are places to store construction equipment and other materials used for the transformation inside the park. These will be massive workspaces, mostly on the far side of the river, over behind Big Thunder, and also behind the show buildings for Pirates and Tiana's Bayou Adventure, essentially between Floridian Place and the back of Frontierland. Some of these laydown yards will require the removal of vegetation and topsoil to create large open spaces with sand fill, and others will simply be created on top of the soil that's presently there. These areas should all be easily visible from the monorail, from the upper floors of the Grand Floridian facing the park, and the walkway that connects the Grand Floridian to the Magic Kingdom. There are suggestions that some construction work, perhaps for these laydown yards, will begin early in March. From there, Disney will give fans notice as to when the river and the island will actually close. As we've talked about in recent episodes, I think Disney wants to start this work while Big Thunder is closed, and Big Thunder will be closed through the end of 2025 at least. So expect a push here for a relatively short timeline leading up to the creation of those laydown yards. I would guess that we probably have at least until summer, and maybe through summer before any river or island closures. But once that happens, Rivers of America will be blocked off with construction fences. One of the requirements of the permit is that Disney will bring the river basin at least up to the elevation of the rest of Frontierland while diverting stormwater away from the park and still supporting the wetlands. If you want to have one last ride on the Liberty Bell or visit Tom Sawyer Island, I would look to the next few months. Also, construction in the river area will surely disrupt the track for the steam trains, so if you want to take the Grand Circle tour before a temporary closure here, you should probably do that pretty soon as well. Once the river has been filled in, the land regraded, and the holding pond arranged, then work can begin on construction for the new themed area, with a lot of rock work and 2 themed attractions and various pathways. As we've discussed on recent episodes, the delay in the permitting process here appears to have shifted the overall timeline of the Florida projects, with work moving quicker on the Monsters Incorporated land at Hollywood Studios. Drags on the Disney stock price are a huge problem here, as investors understand that lower visitation to Florida is a huge problem for the company overall. So getting these new themed areas open is a priority. Again, if I had to take an educated guess here, I would say that Tropical Americas hits its 2027 opening date, as that will demonstrate that Disney is really turning the resort around. Next up, I suspect, is Monsters Incorporated at Hollywood Studios in 2028. This water management permit for the Magic Kingdom is good for 5 years from this week, up through February 2030. It can be extended, but that date likely gives you a realistic timeline for construction related to this permit. I'm guessing the target date for the Cars area is now 2029, but as I've said previously, I wouldn't be surprised if these early delays push this out to 2030, and then sometime after that for Villains Land. But let me also add this. The corporate focus on expansion will only last if the company believes that these early efforts help with the visitation numbers and the occupancy rates at the hotels, which in turn elevates the stock price. If a large wave of tourists don't come to see the Tropical Americas area at Animal Kingdom, then Disney may rethink its financial strategies and priorities. But I'm guessing that all of this will work. So let's hope that a sluggish economy or a recession or some other unforeseen problems don't come in to mess this all up, because I'm pretty sure that this is the path to fix Disney's flagship American resort, whether or not you're a fan of the closure of the river or not. I'll be back on Sunday with our regular episode. This has been a short midweek update to simply keep you in the loop about one of the stories that we have been following here for months. Lastly, as you know, we're an ad-free, listener-supported podcast. We do just two things: deep dives on stories related to the history of the Disney studio and the parks, and news and analysis of current events as they relate to the Disney company. We are funded entirely by listener contributions, specifically by listeners who join us over on Bandcamp as monthly subscribers. On Bandcamp, you will find over 300 episodes not available on iTunes or anywhere else. But the best reason to join us there is to support the work we do here and to make sure that this podcast continues to exist. You can support us by becoming a monthly subscriber at dhipodcast.bandcamp.com. I'll also leave a link down in our show notes. So, until next Sunday, this is Todd James Pierce.